So thank you everyone for joining us for the last session of the Big Ideas for Our Energy Future series. My name is Pong Liang, and I am a member of the Energy Futures Lab team, and I'll be hosting this session today on e-mobility with Megan Lohmann, who I will, one of our fellows, and who I will introduce in a moment. Emma, can you move to the next slide, please? This map is by native land is an attempt to represent traditional territories, and is one way we can acknowledge there are many ways to understand and recognize the land where we live, work, and play. I know we are all dispersed in many different regions today due to the nature of our online gathering, but I encourage you to consider your connection to the place where you are. I'm currently on unceded territory of the Squamish, Musqueam, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations. I offer this land acknowledgement to give thanks to those that have been here before me, caring for the land we all share, and hope that we can all be such good stewards for the sake of my children and future generations. This acknowledgement is also a reminder of the discriminatory, racist, and colonial practices that have had a lasting legacy and continue to create barriers for Indigenous people. Thank you. Emma, can you move to the next slide? Today, we will be using some technology in addition to our Zoom platform. And if you have a cell phone, you're welcome to use that. You're also welcome just to use the browser, a web browser on your computer. But if you can go to navigate to www.slido.com. And then once you get on that page, there'll be a place to enter a hashtag code. So just enter hashtag e-mobility, and that will allow for some interaction, opportunity to pose questions and capture questions and actually vote up and down questions. And also we will have a few polls that we would love to get your reaction to a few questions that we have. So once you go in there, there should be actually a question right away that you're welcome to answer. And the question is, if you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be? So if you can just go to slido.com /hashtag e-mobility, and once you get there, there should be a little question that pops up, and it'll give you an opportunity just to type in a quick answer to this question. If you could instantly become an expert in something, what would it be? Yeah, there's some good ones. Parenting certainly would be right up there at the top of my list as well. Time management, that's great. We could all use that. Financing deployment of low carbon technology. Oh, it's a more specific one. So we'll just give people a couple minutes, or a minute or so, just to make sure that they're able to access this, and then we'll move on. Quantum electrodynamics. Oh, wow. Kind of want to ask the question, what is quantum electrodynamics? But oh, power napping, that's good. Okay. So Emma, could you move on to the next slide? So just a little bit of an introduction to our Energy Futures, or the Big Ideas for Our Energy Futures series. In March 2020, so earlier this year, the Energy Futures Lab's Managing Director, Alison Cretney, co-wrote an article on with the lab's founding partner, founding director, Chad Park, titled 5 Big Ideas for Alberta's Energy Recovery. These ideas included hydrogen, geothermal, bitumen beyond combustion, artificial intelligence, as well as lithium. The article was very well received, and in response, the Energy Futures Lab hosted 2 events featuring EFL fellows with expertise in these fields. Of course, there are many more big ideas shaping our energy future, which is why the lab decided to extend this conversation through to October 2020 with the big ideas for our energy future speaker series. This is an interactive speaker series which allows participants to connect virtually with members of the EFL network. By discussing new ideas as a community, the lab sees an opportunity to encourage cross-pollination across all stakeholders in the energy system on the topic of how we can create the energy system the future requires of us, while fueling economic recovery in Alberta. Participants are encouraged to build connections, explore how various topics might be shaping Canada's collective relationship with the energy landscape. So, without much further ado, I'd like to take a moment to introduce Megan. So today we're really lucky to be joined by Megan Lohmann. Megan has been working in the field of climate and energy for 15 years, engaging with local government, industry, public, and First Nation on innovative local solutions in response to challenges around energy efficiency, electric mobility, and local greenhouse gas emission reduction, among a variety of other topics. She is passionate about designing and implementing high-impact initiatives through effective collaboration. She believes that these projects can leverage and enhance the strengths of governments and organizations at the local and regional levels. Megan is head of Community Energy Management for the Community Energy Association, an organization working across Western Canada to accelerate climate and energy initiatives. So without much further ado, I'll turn it over to Megan. Megan will provide a bit presentation on some of the great work that she's been doing and through the Energy Futures Lab, and there will be an opportunity for question and answer after that. As you listen to Megan's presentation, if you have questions, feel free to use the Slido page to capture questions and also to upvote questions that you may also have. So I'll turn it over to you, Megan, and if you
Great, thank you.
Let me know.
Will do. Thanks, and let me just get my screen up here. All right, it should be showing there. All good, Pong?
Yeah.
Great. Well, thanks for the introduction and thanks for joining today. I know the first day after a long weekend, it's the list is even longer than usual, so appreciate you taking your lunch hour with us. So as Pog mentioned, I'm a fellow with the Energy Futures Lab and work with the Community Energy Association. We're a charitable nonprofit that work across primarily Western Canada, but do work nationwide on a variety of sectors. And of course today, the topic is around electric mobility, which falls under our transportation realm. Before we get started, I just thought I would recognize where I'm presenting from today, and I'm actually located in Fernie, so just across the border, which gives me lots of opportunity to work with communities across Alberta and British Columbia. And I'm in Ktunaxa Amakis, and the Ktunaxa Nation, just a very quick shout out to some of the leadership they've done around e-mobility and renewable energy initiatives. These photos are from a launch event that we had when they revealed their, or I guess officially opened their 119 panel solar system on their government building in Cranbrook, and the opening of the level 2 station that's connected directly to that system. So really excited to see that leadership and encouraged by that. As well, want to explore new opportunities in communities across both British Columbia and Alberta in terms of supporting First Nations and engaging in electric mobility and renewable energy. So the focus today, of course, e-mobility in Alberta. It does exist. There are electric vehicles out there, and what I'll be talking about today is how we see the future of e-mobility in the province. This is just 3 examples of 3 sites located in Alberta, and I'll dive into that a little bit more. I want to start first, though, with just reminding us about the importance of envisioning that future. And Pong mentioned Chad, a co-founder of the lab, and he says that we can't forecast our way to the future that we want. We really need to begin with the end in mind. And I really appreciate that, because I am certainly motivated by sort of that longer term visionary thinking, and then stepping back and grounding ourselves into what needs to happen to get there. So when the conversation around e-mobility was initiated at the lab, the topic, it seemed so big, and many other fellows had lots of ideas of what we could tackle in this e-mobility space. And it started out with this concept that we should establish this integrated electric mobility network across the whole province that would have load management, grid management. We'd be exploring vehicle to grid, vehicle to home, on-site renewable energy. And it felt exciting and really big, and probably a little too much to start tackling at the outset. However, a really great kind of concept of where we could go in the future. I looked at examples like in Hawaii. This is from their State of EVs in Hawaii document, where they're looking at just that idea of the future state being one that's very interconnected with two-way flow of energy, EVs feeding back to the grid, and renewable localized energy sources powering them in turn. Lots going on in this space, and certainly lots of opportunity in provinces like Alberta around this, but the importance of sort of looking strategically at how to get to that end state is where I started to focus. So I'll just briefly show this, this image that is used often at the lab, this concept of backcasting, where you do put that longer term vision out there, and hold that while stepping back into current state and figuring out the strategic steps that need to be taken to get to that vision. So that future state is that integrated e-mobility network where we've got load management and two-way flow of energy. And we've got lots of organizations, obviously utilities, energy companies, working collaboratively for that optimal scenario of electric mobility in the province. But we do have to step back to today, the current situation and the baseline state. We, of course, do have electric vehicle adoption in Alberta, and I'll speak to that a little bit more. We've got lots of small pilots going on, and certainly big ideas. But how we get from where we are today to where we want to be is really what this e-mobility initiative is about. It's about helping every community see themselves in that future state. And so that's what certainly I'm passionate about, is bringing it down to the community level, to local governments, to individuals, to help them see themselves in that future and contribute to the development of that future. So that's really where the focus is, where I'll speak to today. The ecosystem of electric mobility is huge. So we could dive in on policy, we could dive in on financial incentives and other mechanisms for financing e-mobility, you know, education and engagement, infrastructure, electric vehicles themselves. And that's really where the first step in my mind is for communities, particularly small communities in the province, which is just getting more familiar with the technology, starting to see more adoption of electric vehicles locally, and encouraging the travel of electric vehicles throughout the region through improved networks. So within this big ecosystem, we've really focused in on that element of it, supporting local, regional, and province-wide adoption of electric vehicles and facilitating the movement of them. So when we talk about sort of our baseline scenario, what we know today, it's may be a surprise to many, but Alberta is actually a leader. Alberta is a leader among provinces who have not had provincial incentives to date. So if we remove BC, Ontario, and Quebec from this chart of electric vehicle adoption, you can see that Alberta actually has had the highest rate of EV adoption among provinces that have never had financial incentives from the government. Of course, there's a federal incentive right now, but we're talking specific provincial incentives. So the first two columns just show the comparison of sales in Q1 of 2019 and Q1 of 2020. Obviously a pretty significant jump there. But when we look annually, we can see an even greater increase over time. So at the end of 2018, there was just over 2,000 electric vehicles on the road in Alberta. By the end of 2019, early 2020, we were at 3,700. So this certainly doesn't capture the delivery of many Model 3s that has been happening in Alberta. We can expect that number to be significantly higher by the end of this year. The point being, though, that residents of Alberta certainly have an interest in electric vehicle technology and a propensity perhaps to explore and adopt new technologies. The issue is that a lot of that adoption, of course, is happening in the urban centers, so Calgary and Edmonton. A barrier to broader electric vehicle adoption, well, there's three main ones that come up often: range anxiety, availability of diverse models, and price. Range anxiety refers to that concern of not being able to make it to the next station without running out of battery. And that can be enhanced by regions that have extreme weather, so cold weather, snow, terrain, because certainly steeper terrain can drain the battery faster, and just a simple lack of stations in those regions where you wish to travel. The other two, available models and price, are changing rapidly just due to the natural transition of the technology. Range anxiety, though, is something that local governments and communities and organizations actually have direct influence over, and through sort of creative approaches can start to tackle. It's also that reason why urban centers tend to have higher electric vehicle adoption, because really it's the only place where you're able to, well, until now, it's the location where drivers can return home, charge overnight, commute in the morning, and not be concerned about that range anxiety. So it's not an unfounded fear, certainly. This screenshot is from 2016, I believe, from plugshare.com. It's an app that maps electric vehicle charging stations worldwide. So the green dots indicate level 2 stations, and the orange indicate level 3 or DC fast charging stations. Back in 2016, this is what the network looked like in southeast British Columbia and southern Alberta. The cluster of green icons in the middle is the city of Calgary. So lots of connectivity in terms of public charging, some home charging there as well, within that urban center. And of course, as a result, the adoption of electric vehicles will be higher in that city. When you look into the region, though, very little connectivity outside of Highway 1 in British Columbia. And certainly this hampers not just electric vehicle adoption in those rural areas, but in the city as well, because if one cannot feel safe and secure in terms of access to electric vehicle charging infrastructure when they want to go to the ski hill or to visit family in another community, then the likelihood of them adopting an electric vehicle is quite low. Drivers want that reliability and the security that they're able to drive where they want to drive, when they want to drive. So, of course, a huge region that is not going to be the kind of the priority, I guess, for the private sector to invest in. Certainly, we've seen a lot of leadership from Petro-Canada and Electrify Canada through VW, as well as Shell, who have all installed electric vehicle fast charging stations along heavily traveled corridors. It is, again, that rural area connectivity that is going to continue to hamper electric vehicle adoption if it's not addressed. So this just demonstrates that point exactly, and the data that the City of Calgary has in their EV strategy just goes to 2018, but of course that curve would continue to go up. The point being that there is an increase in electric vehicle adoption in the urban centers, and at the end of 2018 there were over 1,000 registered just in the City of Calgary. Edmonton would look very similar. What will be interesting to track over time is the impact that regional connectivity has on urban electric vehicle adoption. So how can this be tackled? I'll give you two quick examples before I dive into the big idea for Alberta. Accelerate Kootenays was an initiative in Southeast Alberta that our organization facilitated on behalf of the regional districts of East Kootenay, Central Kootenay, and Kootenay Boundary. So this was one of those bare areas on the map I showed you from PlugShare that had little connectivity to electric vehicle charging. All of the stations that are appearing here have actually been installed, so you can ignore the legend. But through a strong collaboration and innovative funding opportunities, these communities successfully installed 13 fast chargers and over 40 level 2 stations to really significantly connect that region of British Columbia over to the Alberta border and down to the Montana border in the south. What's happened now in this region is that electric vehicle adoption, because of that regional connectivity and reliability of the network, has gone from 22 vehicles in 2016 to over 220 vehicles today. So a huge increase in the strength of the network, which has resulted in higher adoption of electric vehicles. Whoops, this one turned out to be a little fuzzy, but in southern Alberta, similar leadership was shown by the Regional Economic Development Association, so South Grow and Alberta Southwest, as well as the City of Calgary, Lethbridge, and Medicine Hat, all of whom collaborated to address, again, that gap in southern Alberta. So they looked to the west and saw the connectivity in British Columbia up to the border, and have also been engaged with the state of Montana, who are installing an electric vehicle charging infrastructure network up to the Canadian border. And so these communities again saw an opportunity through collaboration and unique funding to address that charging gap in the south. So through this initiative, 20 DC fast charging and level 2 stations were installed in all sorts of communities where, again, we're unlikely to see significant private sector investment at this point, just because of the volume of electric vehicles. So now from Calgary south, there's a significant level of reliability in terms of the access to electric vehicle charging stations, and these communities get the co-benefits of hosting stations. The photo on the screen is a perfect example of some of the co-benefits that can result. So this is the launch of the Pincher Creek station. So we had all of our delegates there to cut the ribbon, and then a Tesla drove by to sort of check out the station and say hi. And so we asked the driver where they were from, and they had come from Rosebud. So had noticed that the station was electrified. Again, it showed up on their app. And so they took the opportunity to find a bed and breakfast in Pincher Creek to explore some of the local amenities and activities, and came down for the weekend just because of that station being sort of turned on. So really an example of that immediate economic benefit through tourism and again, reliable connectivity that has allowed that type of travel. So we did not plan that one. It was a total happy coincidence that this driver came by at the perfect time. So once those sort of networks were established through sort of the coordination of our organization with the local governments, through the Energy Futures Lab, we started to think a little bit bigger. And like I mentioned, initially started with that big network concept of, having a fully integrated e-mobility network supported by smart grid infrastructure and load management. Scaled that down after lots of good coaching and conversations with the other fellows to take that first step of helping more communities across the province see themselves in that future. And so with incredible support from the EFL, we did a series of events in the northwest area of Alberta. And sort of behind this timeline is that region where you should be able to see that there's not very many charging stations, and particularly not fast charging stations. So the conversation kicked off with a couple of what's called roadshows and accelerators, which the Energy Futures Lab facilitated. Our organization was able to attend and start the conversation around what an e-mobility network would look like in Northwest Alberta, where, to be honest, the conversation had really never been initiated to this date, although electric vehicle drivers have frequently identified this region as a significant barrier to electric vehicle travel. So over the course of the last 6 months, and through a pandemic, I might highlight, the communities in Northwest Alberta have really come together to develop the big idea of a network in Northwest Alberta. So it started out just just before the pandemic really ramped up with an in-person meeting in Drayton Valley where that big vision was put down on paper. So everyone grabbed their markers and pens and mapped out what could this possibly look like for Northwest Alberta? What are the innovative opportunities, the co-benefits, and the values that we want to communicate through the development of this e-mobility network? And so this was a really exciting initial conversation. And again, just at the beginning of March of this year. Partners were starting to be identified, opportunities to leverage other initiatives were identified, and sort of that bigger thinking of different types of routes. So you can see pipelines on there, you can see industry routes, you can see rail, and even some recreation opportunities. So lots of big thinking happening at this workshop. What was clear was that the communities recognized that there were a lot of local opportunities that would that could come to fruition through this type of initiative. Electric vehicle tourism, like I mentioned, this area has traditionally been a bit of a barrier to EV travel because of the lack of infrastructure. Economic diversification as a result of that tourism, local capacity building, so an opportunity to retrain or upskill industry and trades and contractors for the installation and operations and maintenance of electric vehicle charging infrastructure. A new way to brand or market the region, so one that again would attract more tourists from the sort of recreational lens. And then really an opportunity to demonstrate leadership. So all of this was discussed through what became a series of online workshops with the communities, again, with facilitation from the Energy Futures Lab. So a little fuzzy again, but what we began to see was a real core of leadership starting to emerge in Northwest Alberta, and a desire to demonstrate the opportunity that exists in this region, one that's rural, one that is quite sparse in terms of the distance between the communities, and one that is traditionally focused, of course, on oil and gas industry. This was an opportunity to diversify in all sorts of ways. So these are the 7 organizations in the region that have come together to really create that strong advisory committee, supported by myself and my colleague Danielle, who I believe is also on this call from CEA, to establish what that network is going to look like and how we're going to start to facilitate all of those co-benefits in the region. So what has become of it is an initiative called eVenture. And eVenture is going to effectively map out and fund a series of electric vehicle charging stations across the northwest region of Alberta, connecting to networks that have already been established in British Columbia and along the Highway 2 corridor south in Alberta. So this is very preliminary, so don't, no promises on the icons that are on this, this map, but these are some of the initial ideas of where communities are seeing opportunity to enhance local economic development through electric vehicle tourism and connectivity. So you can see the gray dots actually do demonstrate where there's a pretty robust network connecting the urban centers in Alberta, as well as along the British Columbia border. So I just want to come back to this backcasting approach and reiterate that importance of holding that vision of that future state. We hope that through this project, we can start to integrate some of those innovative ideas in a very micropilot approach. We've already begun to look at opportunities like recreational vehicle electrification. So there is actually a dealer of Taga's electric snowmobile in Edmonton. So what an opportunity to perhaps test that technology in the northwest region of Alberta. There's also other fellows working on initiatives like solar, residential solar, and load management. And so opportunities, again, to cross-pollinate across other initiatives that are exploring what this future state could look like. And then, of course, centering that in where we are today and helping the community see themselves in the solution that is possible in the future. I think I'm going to wrap it up there, just a couple minutes short, but hopefully that provides a bit more time for conversation. But thank you again for the opportunity to share the story about e-mobility in Alberta.
Thank you very much, Megan. That was wonderful. Thank you very much for that great overview of the work that you've been doing and also the situation in Alberta. So now is an opportunity for Q&A. So again, I invite you to go to slido.com and the hashtag is e-mobility. And please feel free to just add questions that you may have on there, and you're also welcome to upvote and downvote questions as as they appear. So actually, there seems to be just one clarifying question for DCFC. So maybe you can just help out with that.
Sure. So apologies for the acronym. It's direct current fast charging. So that's sort of the faster charging stations. So they require 3-phase power, tend to be at minimum 50 kilowatt charging stations. And that's what's been traditionally installed across Canada, really, with manufacturers producing higher powered stations. Certainly Teslas are already higher powered than the 50 kilowatt. I believe Petrocans are at least 100 kilowatt stations. So again, that faster charge opportunity. And Electrify Canada's, I understand it, are again meant to be even faster. So there's an evolution in the technology ongoing right now.
Great, thank you. There is a, I'm not sure if there's someone put TY there. I don't know if that's a question, but
I think that's like thank you.
Oh, okay,
Another acronym.
Okay, yeah, someone upvoted it. Okay, that's great. So there is a question here about our bridge technology. So it says, why is there so much resistance to bridge technologies? That is to say, small onboard gas generator to provide heat and extend range, reducing battery demand.
Yeah, well, yeah, so I think the technology there is the plug-in hybrid electric vehicle. So that's where you've got the gas engine and electric engine. I'm not sure there's resistance really. The Mitsubishi plug-in hybrid is actually one of Canada's best-selling, if not the best-selling now, plug-in hybrid vehicle because of its size. It's a bit more of a crossover SUV. We've driven that as part of our work previously, and certainly that extended range, especially in areas without charging infrastructure or with limited charging infrastructure, is a much more reliable option for sure, and certainly for that providing heat as well. I guess, I mean, personally, I'd love to see the technology in pure electric or battery electric vehicles to be such that you can drive the same distance as a gas or a plug-in hybrid electric vehicle, primarily because of the simplicity of the vehicle. So a plug-in hybrid does, of course, have all of the components and mechanisms of a gas vehicle as well as an electric engine. Battery electric vehicles have significantly less moving parts, significantly less mechanical and maintenance costs associated with them. But with that, right now, there are, of course, limitations. We'll see trucks come onto the market, F-150, Ford F-150 expected, I believe, next summer. I'm sure you've all seen Tesla's Cybertruck. There's some startup companies, Rivian being one of them, in the US that are starting to develop battery electric trucks and SUVs that probably appeal to a larger part of the market. So yeah, I think it's a transition, and certainly the plug-in hybrid electric vehicles, especially if you're able to plug in at home and charge the battery to maximize its use, is certainly an option.
Great, thanks, Megan. There is a comment here. It's sort of a question, sort of comment. It says, this seems like an opportunity well in line for distributed micropower generation. Very interesting discussion. Do you have thoughts or comments that you want to?
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think that that's something, we're seeing the discussion around end-of-life batteries from electric vehicles. So the batteries that can no longer facilitate driving are actually being repurposed for residential scale renewable energy. So what an opportunity to have a sort of a second life for the batteries for that distributed micro or on-building power generation. Certainly when vehicle to grid or vehicle to home technology is more broadly available with the vehicles, again, that'll be an interesting evolution, the ability to perhaps charge to draw power from your solar panel or feed back to your home through a battery would be such an innovative technology for that sort of distributed energy opportunity.
Great, thanks, Megan. There's a question here that reads, what are some of the main reasons that communities are developing these networks, in particular during the COVID pandemic? Like you had mentioned co-benefits.
Yeah.
Like what strikes you as like the opportunity now to move that these communities are looking at?
Yeah, well, certainly in the Northwest, there was a lot of discussion around sort of this as an opportunity for some recovery opportunities. So looking, to when the network is established and being able to facilitate more tourism is just another opportunity for economic diversification in that region. To be honest, there's also a lot of money coming out of government, federal government in particular, for the investment in green recovery and specifically electric vehicle network development. So there's been several grant opportunities, funding opportunities that have opened over the past couple of months that really help to make a very strong case, I guess, for investment in this type of network.
Great, thanks, Megan. So there's a bit of a different question here. So it says, EVs are obviously better for carbon emissions. How do you respond to those that claim life cycle impacts of electric cars are worse due to the battery materials?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's interesting. So there's been a study done, I think it was Simon Fraser University, although I can get the proper information and send it out to everyone, about that life cycle cost of internal combustion engine versus electric vehicle. And certainly at the end of the electric vehicle life cycle, there is a spike in terms of the impacts, but overall it is less than an internal combustion engine. In terms of the battery materials, actually through the lab, I had the opportunity to facilitate a discussion at a lithium conference that happened in Calgary last year. And what I learned was that the expectation is that many of the minerals that are used in electric vehicle batteries are likely to have the same trajectory as, for example, lead in standard batteries that you and I have in our vehicles, in our gas vehicles right now. In that we can expect up to sort of that 98, 99% recycling of those components of the batteries. The trajectory for lithium, for example, is very similar. On top of that, there's some unique opportunities, again, in Alberta with lithium recovery from, and Pong can speak probably more eloquently to this as it is another fellow's initiative, but yeah, extracting lithium from the
like the water.
The water from the oil and gas processing. Yeah. So lots of, I think, unique opportunities to look at domestic access to some of these minerals and materials used in batteries. And I think a lot of opportunity for the reuse of the batteries at their usable end of life for driving, again, like I mentioned, for that renewable application.
Great, thanks, Wayne. So another question here. What are the top 3 factors that favor fast charging stations versus older technology?
And I guess in terms of older, maybe that's just referring to like level 2 stations, which there are benefits to both. So I wouldn't say that fast charging is favored, for example, in car parks in downtown Calgary it would not be an effective use of money to install a bunch of fast charging to accommodate sort of that longer term parking scenario. Level 2 stations are completely appropriate for that situation. It's more of that application for fast charging is suitable for regional travel and sort of the stop and top up type scenarios similar to current gas stations. So we'd want to see that level 2 infrastructure is still being invested in and installed where appropriate. So at locations that tend to hold people longer. Workplaces, of course, home charging is level 2 technology. Recreation centers, malls, that sort of thing tends to be appropriate applications for level 2 or slightly slower charging infrastructure. In terms of that super fast charging opportunities, again, trying to make the experience more like a gas vehicle where you're topping up for a few minutes as opposed to, say, an hour on I'll use a Chevrolet Bolt. I drive that as an example. In a -5 day, it might take me an hour to get from 0 to 80%. And so, of course, manufacturers are seeking to have an experience that's going to be more convenient and more akin to gas refueling.
Great. Thank you. So the next question reads, what do you find as some of the challenges to collaboration between communities, and how can we overcome them?
It's an interesting one because it's not the approach that I've taken in the networks that I've been involved in has never been to sort of force a collaboration. It's been to present an idea and a concept, and if the communities feel that it's their priority or a priority that they would like to further, then the collaboration is quite a natural one. So I can't say that I've had a challenge in forcing people to get along, because that's just not been the approach that I've taken. I think there's been enough positive demonstrations and leadership shown by collaborative approaches in other regions that it's starting to just happen organically. So when we did the Accelerate Kootenays Southeast British Columbia initiative, it was actually the folks in Southern Alberta that came knocking on the door of the mayor, actually of Fernie, to say, hey, how do you guys do this? We want to do the same. And then similarly, Northwest Alberta, MD of Greenview kind of looked to the south and said, that's an interesting approach to tackling a problem that on our own would be prohibitive in terms of capacity and cost and the whole thing. So I think that there's sort of a natural evolution happening here in terms of these regions recognizing the value of collaboration.
Great, thank you, Megan. So next one's a quick one. It just asks if your slides are available online, or I don't know if we're sharing them afterwards, but maybe someone can pop in and provide a little bit. I think they will be.
It's recorded anyway on. Yeah.
So we'll see. Well, there may be a link that for all the people registered, at least with the recording and maybe with the slides. So I'll come back to you on that. So the next question reads, has there been any contact with communities that have installed solar panels to encourage them to add charging stations as well? O'Reilly?
Yeah, not intentionally, sort of as a targeted outreach to communities that have done so. But happy to hear from any communities that want to look at integrating EV charging into solar installations or as a demonstration project. So that certainly was a big emphasis for the Accelerate Kootenays network. Many of the sites were actually co-located with solar in order to sort of draw that link between where our energy comes from and how we're using it. And the Ktunaxa Nation example was one of those. But it's certainly, it's an opportunity, and happy to hear from any communities that would like to explore it further.
Great, thank you. And then another one here, another carbon related one. For places where electricity is generated using fossil fuels, how does that tie into EV use? That is to say, in considering emissions, does it still make sense to own an EV?
Yes, for sure. So there's been multiple studies done on this, actually comparing the greenhouse gas impact of electric vehicle use in BC versus Alberta versus Ontario, all of which have different grid composition. And in the end, electric vehicle compared to internal combustion engine is at least 30% better in terms of tailpipe emissions in Alberta. So despite the the coal content on the grid or fossil fuel content generally, there's enough of efficiencies gained through just the electric motor, as well as just that mixed composition. There is quite a bit of renewables in the Alberta grid as well. So the end result is a lower greenhouse gas impact compared to internal combustion, even with that carbon content.
Great, thanks, Megan. And yeah, the last question we have here is just asking about case studies. Actually, it says, could you share info/case studies regarding, or studies, cases regarding retrofitting batteries for household applications?
Yeah, so California is actually the jurisdiction where I've read the most about this sort of reusing of battery vehicles for on-site renewable energy storage. Off the top of my head, I can't tell you studies, but if you want to get in touch, I'd be happy to share the resources that I have. And I think it's an exciting and evolving area of work. We have actually in Alberta quite a few battery manufacturing and energy storage companies that this could be an interesting opportunity for. We also have just across the border in BC, in Trail, North America's only or second, I think, only battery recycling facility that actually can break down the component parts of these types of batteries. So again, I think it's an emerging opportunity for the reuse of the EV batteries.
Great.
Anyway, happy to share specific information on that.
Great, thank you very much, Megan. So let's move over to Emma. Can we move to the next slide? We'll move over to the couple of poll questions. So you've had an opportunity to ask Megan questions, but we also wanted to ask you, the audience and participants, just a few quick questions regarding this topic. So this will just take a few minutes. So the first question is, how desirable is e-mobility for Canada's energy future in your mind? How desirable? Okay, so we'll just give it, again, if to answer the poll, just go to slido.com on your phone or on a web browser on your computer. And then when you get there, just use the hashtag e-mobility. And then this poll should just pop up on your screen. And you can it's just a quick click. So I'll just give another 20 seconds or so for people to find that. So overall, it seems, I feel it's very desirable. Okay, so we're just curious to know why. So that's actually the next question. So whatever you rated, desirable or somewhat desirable, or other perspective that you have, yeah, you just take a moment just to type in, well, why is that? Why is it highly desirable? Why is it somewhat desirable? You know, or if you think it's not desirable, that's also great to know why. So why would that be? Lower emissions, improved driving experience, hashtag climate emergency. Cleaner distributed energy generation is a cleaner match for distributed use. Why is this even a choice? It's an imperative. way for the individual consumers to be part of the transition and improve the energy system. Another one around lower emissions and lower greenhouse gas emissions. So yeah, just another 10 seconds if you love to hear your thoughts. Even if they've been said, it's always nice to see what themes are emerging. Limiting fossil fuel end use outlets. It's less practical due to Canada's large footprint, but lots of great info in this presentation to bypass those concerns. Great, thank you. And then Emma, can we move on to the next one? So this is just a quick one here. Do you see EVs as part of your future? So if you already have one, click that. Yes, that will be, you're planning to. Maybe, like if something comes up that better suits your needs, or not at all. You don't see that at all in your future. It's a lot of people planning to.
We're going to have to improve the supply in Alberta as a result. That is another limiting factor.
So there's definitely a lot of people planning to. So again, just another 10 seconds, and then we'll move on to the last one. Okay, Emma, can you just move to the last question? So just the question is, why do you select this answer? So yes, if you're planning to, why is that? Just from your own personal perspective. If it was a maybe, well, why is it a maybe? What what hesitations, what do what would change that answer? For you, what are you looking for? Or if it's a no, then it'd be great to understand why you think that's not in your future. They are fast. I think, like many of you, I've had an opportunity to ride in a Tesla and experience the acceleration. I want to lower my greenhouse gas emissions. I also think the cars are more appealing because I won't have to visit the gas station again. I wanted to lower my carbon footprint, and they are fast. Transport sovereignty. Oh, yeah. So convenient to charge at home. So there's convenience of it as well. Cost is a factor in size. Big enough for my large family and all the gear. Can't wait to make the transition though, especially for commuting. So just another 10 seconds if you to type in your answer and hit the return button, and then we'll wrap up. That's a nice one. For my grandchildren and her family's future. Great, thank you very much, everyone. Emma, can you just move to the last slide? So that concludes the session for today. Wanted just to give a big thank you to Megan for joining us. So thank you very much again, Megan. And also there's a couple of people here behind the scenes, Emma and Kelly. Thank you very much for moving the slides and setting up the poll. So thank you very much for that. And thanks to all of you for joining us. If you are interested in learning more about the Energy Futures Lab and the various initiatives, people, partners that we have involved, there's some links there that you're welcome to follow in some of our major social media platforms. And then also on the bottom there's a link to our website, www.energyfutureslab.com, where you can find more information about the work that we do. And I think that is it. So thanks again, Megan. And thanks again, everyone. I hope you have a wonderful day and enjoy your week.